Hema Murty. Really, really enjoyed talking to Hema. Fascinating background. She got her PhD in engineering. But from what she tells me and what I've heard, her biggest achievement from that was stress management. It's a stressful endeavor. She learned how to cope with it. Friends asked. She quickly started coaching, and it's been many, many years later. But just how does one handle stress, chronic pain, etc.? I do ask about art versus science with hers, with her engineering degree, with her, the way she thinks, and she has different levels. But then she can walk into a room, she practices yoga, teaches yoga, and she could just sense what people need. And just by talking to people, she can kind of, derive where their pain is. But it's a great conversation with Hema and great insight. She's just full of light and really wants to help people. I start the conversation out with harpsichord. She plays the harpsichord. I don't know anybody who plays the harpsichord. Fascinating instrument. I know the Beatles use it in many, many of their songs, but it's just kind of chilling, piano type, keyboard type instrument. But great conversation with Hema Murty. Really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. I'm very excited to talk to you. I don't know anything about the harpsichord.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's the Baroque era, the 1800s of the piano. So in one word, that's basically all it is.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. It's that kind of that chilling piano. It's very pretty, though. I mean, the Beatles used it many times in songs.
They did. That's astute of you to remember that. But that really got me too when I found that piece of information out. Like that was inspiring to me too. Say, if it's cool for them, it's cool for me. Hey.
And how did you get in front of a harpsichord? I don't know if I've ever actually physically seen one. How did
Yeah,
that?
I was just really inspired by Baroque. I always thought that was the coolest piece of kind of a vibe of music. And I've always also been enamored by piano. So one time as a stress reduction tool, I started piano lessons. It wasn't at a young age. It was in my actually after grad school. Like it was like way into my corporate years. I just thought I need something that is not so left brained
Mm.
in engineering. So I thought, okay, well, I will just start and see, like, let's see where it goes. I'm an older student, but hey, let's roll with it. So I just started. I found I got lucky. The teacher that was close to where I was living was amazing. So that really really helped. And
Mm.
in about a year or two, I was teaching in his studio. So
Wow.
that's. But I was your code word dedication. I was really adamant. Like I wasn't just going to sleep through this. If you taught me something, I would practice it all week till I got it perfect the next week. So I guess, that really helped because you're into it and you can see the feedback of how fast
Mm.
you're getting good at it, and you can actually play a song, or just the sound, the feedback of the sound hitting your ears, and you're going, I'm making this. This
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
so
And can you read music?
yeah. Oh, that was the first thing they'll teach you in piano school is basically how to read both hands. And so in a couple of years, like as you point, like if you're doing this every day and you're just practicing, I told myself it's non-negotiable. Half an hour every day. I don't care what's going on. There's a
Look
fire.
at you.
I don't care. No, maybe that one. But other than that, I just practiced. I just made sure there was this time slot that was non-negotiable. And I would just hit it like whatever lesson he told me, I would do it. And sometimes I would flip the page and keep going. So I would prepared. I was that eager beaver student. So next class I was there. And so what he taught me made sense. So we would make good use of our time together so that it wouldn't be dragging your feet and not being prepared, or like, so I guess that inspired my teacher also. And soon enough I asked him about Baroque, and then he started having me play Baroque on a piano. And because I was just something, I've always been inspired by Bach. And so
Hmm.
I said, I want to play Bach. I know it's another instrument, but can we just adapt it for just for the heck of it? Because I just want like the sound of it. Like, let me play a few things. And so he got a really beginner Bach book for me and started teaching me out of that. And soon I was able to play stuff. And then with time, I left my feelers out, and one of my friends was a professional harpsichordist. So the rest is history, as they say.
Wow.
So her husband built them, and
Whoa.
yeah, so it was all of that. Like, I just, where the mind goes, I guess the body flows. So I guess I was sending out the harpsichord vibes, and I
Hmm.
actually met one of the best harpsichordists where I was living at the time. And it just happened that her husband had all the connections. That's just such synchronicity. And so I was really good though, because I mean, they're not anything to sneeze at. They're the price of a car almost. So,
Are
you
they
know,
really? Are they
well, if
really?
you want an authentic one, I mean,
Yeah.
it goes all the way, right? Like, just like cars. So I wanted to get to the authentic version of it. So he had one built in France and had it shipped and all of that. I thought, if I was going to do this, just do it.
Mm,
Don't
mm,
go cheap and then 2 years later say, "Oh, it's not working right," or "it doesn't sound right," and all this. Look, if you're going to do it, just do it, and then just accept that that's the way you're going to go with it, and then be happy with it, because it sounds. Everyone who touches it says, "This sounds amazing," because it was
mm.
rebuilt from one of the original. It was a rebuilt replica of an original, so it works almost like the original, and it sounds like Bach,
That's
and
incredible.
so
Hmm.
yeah, and now I have the same practice scheme every day. I say, "You got this thing in the house. You're gonna sit in front of it every day, whether it's
Hmm.
5 minutes or 10 minutes, or I don't care how long, but you did this. This go do it. Go, don't cut corners now, because you've been all this way." So I've been playing now, I would say, for a good 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not virtuoso. I'm not going to perform, although I have, but like in a church or something like
Mm,
that. But
mm.
nothing, it's not going to be mainstream, type of a big show or anything like that, because I just never wanted to go that route. That would just make me nervous. And I found very quickly that you play for yourself in your home. As soon as there's another set of ears, somehow the knowledge just walks through the door. Like, it
Mm.
just escapes your mind, and it just kind of, it just, like, what, I don't know what I'm doing here. Why are you listening to me? So that takes a little bit of doing. So I have so much respect for people who just walk on stage at Carnegie Hall,
Oh my
do it
goodness.
perfectly, and then and sit through applause of all these hands of, like, people bodies actually listening, and continue on to the next piece. I'm like, how could you possibly do that? They just heard you, every single note. So that takes a little bit of, like, I could stand up and give a lecture, I could teach a class on stuff I know, but this is not my forte. But I'm sure if I was an expert musician, I wouldn't have any problem with that. But that's just my hobby. It's great stress reduction.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pinz and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza-MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. And that's the goal, right? Stress reduction. At what point, Hema, did you realize that you can help people with their stress or their chronic pain? What happened to make that turn, that pivot in your life?
Yeah, I think it's my attitude, just unofficially. That's just my viewpoint on life. Having gone through grad school and engineering and all the rest, I think there was always that piece of me that said, you're not going to cave, you're going to sit this through, and you're going to find a way to make your neurons fire differently. Find another activity that parks the problem area, and that's how you can reduce the stress. And I think that was my autopilot, and I didn't really think too much of it. That was just me, my personality. And then I found friends in grad school and after that in work life and everything else. And then every time they would say, "Oh, I'm really bummed about this," or "This is getting me down," or something, I'd say, "You know what? Why don't we just park that? Let's do something else." And then I realized, oh, this is not normal what I do. I
Hmm.
This is something people can learn, and I can probably teach them. So at some point, I said, people are taking exercise and the whole fitness thing. They don't realize what a great tool it is. They're taking it more like a chore. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got to eat right. I've got to exercise. I've got to, whatever. When they do I have to do this, it's because it's mandated on me by the outside world. It loses its appeal and they do it less.
Hmm.
But if you say, no, do it when you are stuck, do it when the boss gives you 5 minutes and you've got nothing. Do it then. Go for a walk. Because by the time you get back to your desk, you probably solved the problem. That kind of stuff. Like that, just simple stuff to me. But then I realized a lot of people may not be their go to. They may just say, oh, I'm just going to sit here with the stress. I'm going to make it worse. I'm going to slip, kind of sink into it rather than try to get out of it. And I try to kind of go to another direction and make the brain think of something else. Like, just take a break, get a breather, just get some space, because you can't pound at something forever and then hope you're going to make some progress. So that's basically where when I found out that that's something I could teach people. And then I devised my own, flavor of how to do that and just came up with new ways of doing it. And the rest is history, as they say. So I've been doing
So
that for years.
you actually figured out how to teach others before you figured out how to do it to yourself?
Well, I found that I knew how to do it for myself good enough so that I could teach people. And then I just,
How? What happened? What happened in order to make that happen? How did you begin to reduce yourself? Why did you know? Was it a problem and you said you had to make a turn?
yes,
What was that?
I was doing my PhD, my graduate school days,
I
and
see.
the doctorate work was just highly stressed. I mean, even
Right.
even the masters and all of that, everything was very stressful. And every single time I had noticed, like I just rewound the tape, I found that every time I had come to a point where it was just too much, I noticed myself that I had always found something that would make me physically more active. Like I would go running, I would just do things that is not my normal. It's just something I would do to get the body moving. And I realized, oh, this is interesting. So I
Hmm.
would keep doing that. Took up weight training, did all the stuff that I needed to do to get the stress in control. When I was doing my PhD, I started running. Like that's how late in the game I
Wow.
started as a young adult. So that's pretty late for most people for their bodies. But then I said, let's just go with this. I'm not going to do anything crazy at the moment. I'm got, some thinking that okay, you're doing this later in life, so you better pace yourself. Just do it for the brain, just do it for the mental space, just do it for the fresh air. Just get yourself out there and do something that would feed back into the body and energize you so that when you sit back at your computer trying to solve the problem, you've got a new set of ways of looking at things. You've got some
Hmm.
fresh air, you've got some
Hmm.
confidence. You just went out and killed a pavement. Okay, you can do this. And you just sit and think through it. And then when I found out that was helping me, I realized, oh well, this is a thing. I could package this. I could figure out what it is that person needed, whichever one of the vectors of fitness. I could introduce that into them. For example, it could be nutrition, it could be just anything that would create a stress reduction in their day, and then that would give them the pause. It's just looking for that pause. So there's no one size fits all, obviously. Like, it's how you're made. Some people hate meditation, some people like it. So if I introduce a 5-minute meditation in their day, they'll go, this is great, I can do this at work. Whereas for other people, that's like, no, I think I'll go for a walk around the block, or
Hmm.
go for a run at lunchtime, or I will do something else, whatever it may be. So you have to figure out how the person's wired and see what helps them. And this is maybe a problem with people, if they go to the internet and say, oh, this worked for that person. Well, it may not work for you, So that's basically figuring people out was another thing, another skill set I had, which I realized later that I had that. So
Hmm.
all discoveries about myself, how I could help people. And I think that's basically how it turned out into a business, is that it formed itself. It kind of made itself into a business where, one person and so on, it just grew. And I found, oh, I see. Okay, so now I have to figure out where this person can be helped the most and figure out what knowledge base I have. And then along the way, I amassed certifications in all those disciplines so that I
Hmm.
had some street cred, and then people would have faith in my abilities. And then, just started helping more people along the vector of where they would need help. And it's so different how people are wired. That's what amazes me in this business is each person is wired differently. Ultimately, the ultimate result is take a pause in your day and think about yourself. Like it's like looking in the mirror. What do I need? And it's going to be different for five different people. Will have five different needs that will make a difference. That'll move the needle. Like you could say to someone, you need to drink more water, but that person may not move the needle having that activity.
Hmm. Hmm.
For them, it may be something more physical. Maybe they need to run more. Maybe they need to do something more dramatic. So, just figuring out where people are, that's no one size fits all. That's something I figured out soon.
What's the difference between coaching and therapy?
I think they're ambiguous in the West, the way the West defines it. I know, and the reason I say that is because I know some therapists who are officially therapists in European countries where you're not supposed to call yourself that unless you have a certain set of
Hmm.
guidelines. Where in the West, we can call ourselves a coach and a therapist, and it really is pretty loose. There's no organization which says you cannot call yourself this. The only regulations are for people like RMTs, massage therapists, or those physiotherapy or chiropractors. Those are regulated. The personal training business is not regulated, but you do need a certification for your insurance. So these are all
Hmm.
these are all guidelines that people go through. Now, if you've developed your own methodology and you have successfully trained people, let's say over not just today and yesterday, but over the course of 10 years, let's say you've amassed a bunch of clientele that you've solved problems for, then I think you have every right to go and call yourself a therapist because you've proved yourself at that level, or coach. And I think it really depends on what the client is is seeing in the word. So you kind of
Hmm.
have to approach it from them. When I think of coach, just because the ramifications and the connections of the word, I often think of professional sports.
Hmm.
So I don't want that connection to happen because I that's not my client, that's not my target market. So I don't want people to come to me with that uh, backstory or that need that I'm not going to be able to solve. And I also don't want to mislabel that. So I think therapy is a good name because yoga therapist is an official title for
Hmm.
the kind of schooling I've had. So that
I,
actually
I, I've heard people say, Hema, that therapists look back, coaches look forward.
I don't really agree with that. I think coaches are basically that. I think there are woven those two words. I think you can use either one.
Hmm.
I think what both of them do is their end game. When I approach a client, I think my end game is get them from where they are now to where they want to be. And I think both disciplines, both coaches, like even in professional sports, they're trying to get their team to where they need to be. A therapist, well, any therapist on any discipline that you pick is trying to get them from where they are for where they want to be, whether
Hmm.
that's mental health or physical health or sleep therapist or nutrition therapist, yoga therapist. But I think that because names have not been officially defined in our society, I think as long as you're thinking about becoming better than you are, I think that's the vector that everybody wants to. I think the past doesn't really define you as much as your present circumstance. because I think a lot of people get married to their past, and that's what prevents them from getting to tomorrow.
Hmm. I just kind of had this the three pillars of health to me are generally, what you eat, nutrition, exercise, and sleep. But when it comes to stress reduction, you're kind of it seems to me your three pillars are yoga, weight training, and nutrition.
Well, let's see now. I would think of it more macroscopically. I think of it more as movement, like you just said, movement, nutrition, stress reduction, hydration, and sleep management.
Hmm.
And I think the one that's loaded the most out of that is stress reduction, because your stress reduction could come from bad nutrition. And your stress reduction
Mm.
could come from your lack of movement, or movement for you, the wrong movement for you. You want to correct that. And your stress reduction could come from sleep. But a lot of people say, no, no, all those other things, I do work out at the gym, I eat really well, and I'm hydrated. I just need to take my stress. I sleep really well. I just need to take my stress down. That's why they come to me, and then
Hmm.
they say, need to take my stress down. But you will find that the other things are the problem, and then you try to nudge them. But on top of that, if they say they're stressed and the other stuff is good, clearly the other stuff is not good. But
Hmm.
their awareness is at the stress level. So the first thing I usually do is try to get them to breathe and start thinking about themselves. Some gratitude practice, maybe some self practice, saying pause in the day, 5 minutes. Think about yourself, think about where you are, where you need to go, what your life is about. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe that is not happening. And self awareness, like what triggers you. So I start with that. And once they kind of like a buy-in, like, oh, okay, she's got me, I understand what she's talking about, and I'm going to do this. 2 weeks in, then you start with, what's your movement like? Maybe that's not I start looking at these other parameters, because now there's a buy-in. They feel like you're your confidant. You've got them, you
Hmm.
understand them, and things are moving, because by the end of 2 weeks they've done this practice where they're aware, more self-aware, and then they know what things are happening with them, like what can move the needle for them. So that's where it's coming from.
And I heard you say that you can within the first whatever 15 minutes, half hour, just by the way you're interacting with someone, if they're not leaning forward, etc., you can kind of tell where some of their pain is. Use your intuition a bit there.
Yeah, I am a spiritually inclined intuitive coach, and that's a trait that I found in the course of my business. Is a lot of people were asking me, how is it that this actually happened? Because I was teaching a lot of yoga classes back in the day. Not now, it's all through Zoom, but back in the day, I had a lot of live classes, and I would walk in and instantly feel that person over there. I know exactly what movement we're going to do today to fix that.
Really?
Oh, it was so uncanny. And soon enough, they would leave the class telling me, "How did you know?" I walked in today and I was thinking, "Should I come? Should I not?" But I had this thing, and you kind of whatever you did, I'm so good. How did you know that? And it's just this. I had this ability to walk into a class and intuitively like inhale stuff, and then understand why people came into the class. What did
Wow.
they need? And so they all felt like they were heard, or that the need was filled. They'd come back, they'd bring their brothers or sisters, or everybody started coming to the class to realize that, oh, I see, this is what real yoga class is about. It's not just a vanilla thing. I can't get it through the internet. I need to see a live trainer. So
Hmm.
I think I changed people's impression of what yoga and the whole thing would be, because a lot of people had this idea that it was this canned set of moves, touch your toes, blah blah blah, and and I can't do that. And that was this thing that I used to get people would say. I said, well, I'm not going to ask anyone to do that, because anytime you go into a discomfort zone, it's no longer yoga. Sitting here talking to you, this is yoga. Why? Because we're both conscious of where we are, what we're doing, what our interactions are. The mind is involved. The mind is involved with our bodies, and we're healthy and happy and having a nice conversation, and that's yoga. Yoga is defined as a set of conditions where you're happy, your
Hmm.
body is happy, and people don't realize that. They think it's a set of moves. Well, that's just the fad side of it that got misconstrued, like anything, right? Take any word and it's been
Hmm.
totally misconstrued by whatever, people who want to define it differently. But the real definition is something I wanted to promote. So I taught a lot of classes where people would be, oh, I don't know, I just got dragged into this, and they'd leave saying, oh, this is what real yoga is. Okay, I'm gonna do this at home. It's so cool. Like I can do this, you know. So that was my thing. I realized there was an intuitive side to my treatment process. And so now through Zoom, I sit with clients and we do like a free discovery call. And I tell them, your problem is actually not what you're complaining about, but we can fix this. And this is what we're going to do. And then I describe them and they think, how did she know that? So that was part of my treatment program. So that's something I have that's unique to me.
Yeah, very unique and very cool. You tend, it would seem, from what I've heard you say, that you have a strong focus on women over 50.
Yes.
You should have a bond with them. Why is that? Why is that the case?
Well, I found through clients that was the most underserved clientele. I
Ah,
used to go to the gym a lot, and I found that a lot of trainers were not giving them the package they need, the exercises they need, or the motivation they need. And also, it turned out to be that population thought about themselves a lot less, and they would
hmm,
serve their family, their friends. Anybody out there need my help? I'm there. But the last person they thought of was themselves, and so they'd end up with pain, not tell people about it, and then suffer through that. So as
hmm,
clients came to me, a lot of them were in that demographic. There were women over 50 who were professionals, just had very little time. They were like either CEOs, presidents, or management C-suite, and then they would say, I have no time, I have family, I have job, I have very little time for myself, and when I spend time with my friends, the last thing I want to do is go to the gym, so help me out here. So I ended up kind of gravitating towards them with one-on-one sessions, and then I found out, oh, I see, this is a real thing. Like this demographic, they
hmm,
just need some more attention, they need something catered towards them. So I started just really talking to them and having my programs all around their needs, and that kind of what does that person need, what does that demographic need, and what is their life like right now. It's usually extremely busy with a lot of people depending on them. They're givers, so simple is best, time is at a premium, so all of that, I just bake that into the package. And I also realize they're very savvy too. They know what health is, they know what fitness is, they know they need time for themselves, but sometimes all they need is another female to have that accountability and
hmm.
say, I understand you, I get you, I'm where you are, and just talk to me, and I get you, that kind of thing. And I think that really resonates with them. Just having that accountability is
Hmm.
something they look forward to.
Hema, are people in charge of their own stress?
Well, there's two parts to that. One is, well, the simple answer is yes. But if it was that easy, would you have any stress, right?
Right.
Because you'll know, okay, I'm in charge, let me know what to do. But unfortunately, how our brain is wired is that my boss, my fill in
Hmm,
the blank,
hmm,
my spouse, my kid, and that's how we start the day, right? So they did blank, and so I am. And it takes a lot to step out of that hundred swords pointing at you milieu,
hmm,
step out of that and say, oh, wait a second, it's how I'm seeing this. Okay, so if the boss puts stuff on my desk that needs to be done, I can take a breath. I can take a pause. I can maybe talk to that person, my boss, and say, this is unrealistic. Have a conversation, take a breath to see what do you need. And that never happens, right? Most of the people who come to me and say, well, this is stressing me out, is usually because they haven't thought about what do I need? And is that more important? At this point, you have to say yes. But it takes them a while to say, yeah, what I need is important, and maybe I can pause this, rewrite it. Let's rewrite the script. Let me see if I can be in charge of this. Let me negotiate.
hmm.
Negotiate with your family. You can negotiate with your friends. You can negotiate, with the world around you. But that never happens. Usually, it's okay. You want this? Okay, I'm going to drop everything and do this. And so now I'm stressed. Of course. And some people put it on themselves too. They have high expectations of themselves. Nothing wrong with being driven, but then you have to pace yourself, which is why I always tell my clients, do a morning practice where you look at yourself. Like, try to see, where am I? What do I need in this day? What will make this day great? How will I want to feel? What do I want to feel having gone through this day? What do I want from this day? And is it realistic? Like, you can say, today I want to win the Nobel Prize. That makes me
Mm.
feel great. Oh, yes. But how much stress are you putting on yourself, to get there? So is it realistic? Is it, something, is that what you really want? So lots of questions that self-care will demand, but a lot of people may or may not do that. And so when you say, is stress self-induced, the answer is yes, but it's not that easy, because you have
Mm.
to take that pause, do some writing practice, look at gratitude. Maybe you're just putting too much on yourself right now. And maybe there's ways around it that you can negotiate.
Hey, Joey Pinz here. Want to take your podcast experience to the next level? I'm excited to invite you to become a YouTube member. It's the absolute best way to support the channel and enhance your connection. Join our amazing community and unlock the incredible perks, custom loyalty badges, exclusive emojis, and priority comment replies. Your voice will always stand out. Be the first to watch new videos with early access, receive special membership shoutouts, and get exclusive behind-the-scenes photos and updates. Dive into content available only to our members, special videos, deep dives, and insider perspectives. Engage directly with me. Suggest podcast topics you want to hear, and even get personalized video shoutouts. Hit the join button right now and become part of something special. Let's build this amazing community together. I can't wait to welcome you as a new member. Join the Joey Pinz family today. Just completely anecdotally, right? Hema, I find when I talk to friends, colleagues, I find they're stuck in one of three ways. The first one being them trying to control things they can't control,
Right.
right? If it's out of your control, there's nothing you could do about it. Two is the whole kind of holding off on happiness. I'll be happy when I lose the weight, or when I get the raise, or if this person treats me this way, I'll be happy. It's kind of holding off on happiness. And then the last one I find is just people living in the past with regrets. If things would have been different then things would be different now. And I don't know if there's a real remedy to any of those, but it really all around my question is, are you in control of your own stress? I think it all really revolves around that. Thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And you are in the driver's seat. Like, I mean, that again, that's the short answer to it. You are in the driver's seat, because information is just information. A fact is a fact. For
Mm,
example, all the three things, all the three lanes that you just described are just facts.
right.
But I could take a fact in three different ways. I could be ecstatic, I could be dejected, and I could be neutral. But it's my choice. Okay, so my favorite team lost a game yesterday. Some people will cry the whole day.
Mm, mm,
Some people will say, you know what? Yeah, but they were so close. I'm happy. That score was so great. I was amazed at the game. I got a lot out of watching it. I was happy. It was 3 hours away from my life. I watched a really good sports game. I mean, and then the third person can say, well, it was good. Next time, better, better luck next
mm,
time. But they did their best, and I'm going to watch it next year and they'll do better. So the same piece of information, I think, is basically, it's up to you. So all the three lanes that you described, the past, close that door, man.
mm,
It's
mm.
done. Are you going to go back and say, hey, Julius Caesar, that was so wrong of you? Like,
You
it's
messed
really
me
going to
up.
help. It's messed up. What's wrong with you, man? You messed up. It's 2025. Get a life. So yesterday is yesterday's news. I mean, nobody picks up yesterday's paper. Like, what? So I
Mm,
think you got to put a door on it. But if you can learn something, hey, yesterday, that response to that person may not have been the best. So let's close the door on the event. But what did I learn? Well, the next time that person comes and says something similar, I think I've got a better response to that, and I can talk to myself better after the event and maybe learn from it.
mm,
Or, you know what? I don't want to talk to that person anymore. So
mm,
guess what? Put a red light on that person, and have minimal amounts of, if they set your flags up, if they trigger you, then that's on you to say, okay, I'm going to put a red light around that person, and maybe have minimal interaction, because that's it. Like, that's the trigger. So that's the past. And for, the present and things that you can't control, again, you just defined it yourself. It's the same like the past. If you can't control the weather, for example, that's one, cannot control it.
Hmm.
So if it's going to rain for 10 days in a row and you had plans to go boating or something, guess what? You got to wrap your head around that and move on. What's something in the house you haven't done or something? You just make your mindset so that, guess what, next week's going to be better. We'll do it then. And there's always tomorrow, So there's always a way to wrap your mind around it. But I think if you wrap your head around an event that's got to happen, or I'm not going to be happy,
Mm.
then I think you're giving your power away to the
Right.
outside world,
Right.
and all the power is in here. And we know people who have nothing who are extremely happy, and
Hmm.
we know people who have everything who are extremely unhappy, and we hear about them every day in the news. So I think giving a lot of good examples in the world about people who have different sets of things, which we would say, God, if I had that, I would be so happy.
Hmm.
And then we realize that person's not. So maybe by the time I get there, this may not be what I want. Or maybe we think we want that. So again, I think I'm going back to that morning practice where you review, does it really make you happy? Is it the
Hmm.
thing, or is it you? Or is it because you're unhappy with something? And if it is, maybe that's where we need to do the work. I think a lot of self work is missing in a lot of us. It's easy for me to sit here and say that. It's a big deal. Taking time out of your day is what I find people have the most difficulty with. And I don't think it's the troubles of the day, the stressors of the day. It's basically making the time to face your inner things, your inner thoughts. That's a
Hmm.
hard place to look. It's easier to go out there and say that person and this person. No, it's actually me. It's
Hmm. Hmm.
how many people say that, and then do the hard work to say, how do I get rid of that thought process, that break that loop? um, they need to do the hard work. They need to put a kibosh in. We can go back to our first statement where we talked about stress reduction and go, that loop is a stressor. So, if you say to yourself, this happens and I get stressed, well, the onus is on you, and then you say, okay, if that happens, I'm stressed. Okay, so what can I do to break that cycle? I can go for a walk, clear the air, talk to a friend, all those millions of things that you can come up with, get some water, I don't know, just do something that will recreate those neurons in your brain so that they don't fire it the same way that they did before. Because basically a thought is just that, right? A pattern. So you can break any patterns. You just have to want to do it. But if you're happy being unhappy, that's another problem.
Mm, it is.
We could go there, but that's another problem altogether. Are you happy being unhappy, or are you happy that you want to get rid of the unhappiness? So those are choices, So some people hug their unhappiness. Now, when you mentioned pain, I've had hundreds of clients, and over that time, there's some clients that I've had to let go because at some point you realize that
Wow.
this is too big a problem for moi. The little old me who's just a trainer, basically. I'm not a psychotherapist. I will help people along that road with meditation, but the work is on them, right? So that's not my corner. That's not my expertise. So, but you do realize that after a while, if it's a recurring pain, then it's something more. They're hugging their unhappiness. Their identity is with the pain. So I know you've got stuff to say. So I've gone that.
That term hugging their unhappiness is depressing. It's
It is
you could just because they're embracing it, that they know it's there, they're
right,
acknowledging it, and they're holding
right.
on to it. I mean, that's sad. I always think one of the most hurtful things one can say is that they're lazy, because laziness implies that they can do it, they just
Yeah,
don't want to.
they've chosen not to. I
Yeah,
totally
that's
understand.
terrible. So
It
hugging
is.
their unhappiness is, ugh. So when you first realized the tools that you had to help with your own stress and that you could help others, are they the same tools that you developed way back then that you have now? Have they matured? Are they the same? Are they different?
Well, I think now, having hundreds of clients later, I think
Yeah.
what I realized, yeah, so exactly to your point, is what I've realized is that you've got to figure people out, like what's going to tip, what's going
Mm.
to tip the scale here, what's going to move the needle. And it does take, a lot of my skills, like the skill set of intuition. I have to talk to them during the discovery call. I can usually figure out where they're coming from. And you've actually hit the point here, is that a lot of people identify with their whatever is wrong with them. Like, I've
Mm.
got, no, you don't have it. You have a temporary situation where that is present, coexisting with you.
Mm.
But that's a different mindset, right? I don't have that. That's not me. But people will come to me and say, I have, well, you may coexist with it, but that doesn't define you. So
Mm.
let's separate the two and get to the core of you. And that's hard because, as you point out, Rich, just now, they do identify, they hug it, they feel their identity
Mm.
and that pain, or that, like, if they've been so long with it that it's now part of them. I have to get up and then I have back pain. Well, let's
Mm.
just put that out there. Okay, but that's not you, right? There was a time when you didn't have that, correct? So your body moved to a point where it presented you with back pain. That could be your body trying to talk to you. But you have to step back from that and say, I'm not the back pain. I encountered it because my body was trying to talk to me and say, that you need to pause, you need to look at what you're doing, you need to look at your activity level. Maybe the stress is being put into the back so that you will listen. Maybe
Mm.
it's been knocking at another level and you haven't been listening. Maybe you had a headache and you just popped some aspirin, you're good to go. Instead of stopping, why did I get a headache? And see, that's the question that a lot of people need to start asking. Like, why do I have this? Why do I have an issue with a person? Let's take that, because that actually feeds into their mental and physical stress, and that
Mm.
shows up as a back pain. So they've had some trigger way before their pain arises. And they don't deal with it. So one person annoys them. They think that's part of life. Every time that person annoys them, they're going to get this back pain. But they don't put the two and two together. So they say, okay, the problem is the person, right? No, the problem is not the person. The problem is the person annoys you and you're not dealing with it.
Mm.
So it's you. The whole thing is us. And we have to sit there and go, what annoys me? Okay, so at the level 0, stop letting that person into, stop having that interaction at the level you're having it.
Mm.
As I said, put a red light on some people. Just
Mm.
don't, nod your head, go on, move on throughout your day. And that's the level 0. Now, if you really want to take the bull by the horns, that's a whole other level. That's like, now you have to go into, what is it about that person, and all of that. Now, you may not want to. You may just want to figure out that you want your interaction to be less. And then when preemptive strike it. Like, just go, okay, I'm going to meet with that person. They're going to annoy me. They're going to say all the things, all the triggers are going to go off. Come back and do your own breathing exercise. Come back and run on a treadmill. I don't care what. Do something that take it out, because you have to do a preemptive strike. Either deal with it or deal with it after the event. But
Mm.
don't. This is not a permanent thing in your life. You're not born with a person, and here's a person to annoy you. How's that? To enjoy your life, let's walk away. That's not it. I think what it is it's a lesson to say, how are you going to promote your self care so that, yes, there'll be people that annoy you, but there are people that you love too, that love you back. So let's go in that direction. Why don't you focus on that? Or maybe there's an activity you love. Maybe there's a book you love. Maybe there's a movie you love. Something. Pick that and preemptive strike it. So go, okay, I'm going to be annoyed. There's going to be a trigger going off. Let's come back from that thing. Okay, I'm going to watch my movie and just go. That's it. That event is out of my mind now. Just deal with it at some level. I don't know what, but it's got to be something.
I'm trying to. You have a PhD in engineering. You have these levels. You're very matter of fact, but you play the harpsichord. You can sense people's feelings when you get into yoga classes. When you're just talking to them, you can get, your intuition is there. I'm trying to figure out your art versus science balance. I want to say you're more science than art, But I don't think. Tell me, like, how do you approach solutions? What is your approach to life? Tell me.
Well, I think I'm mostly left brained, but
You
I think
are.
I fooled my right brain to not complain about that.
Ah.
Because I have some right brain activities enough to keep the right brain from saying you're not paying attention to me. So, so I think I've kind of addressed it at that level, and I
I'm
think
sorry. What's the right brain voice again? How does that go?
you're not paying attention to me.
Oh wow, it
You
nags.
didn't
It
know that,
nags.
right?
I didn't know that.
There's a factoid I just threw at you. Little known scientific fact. That's how the right brain talks. Well,
Interesting.
well, for some people, it's the left brain talking like that.
Right.
Go do some math. How come you feel the math does? So some
Hmm.
people, for some, it's the left brain. But I think that what happens is when you get into, I mean, just being honest here, but when you get into more, what you said, like the touchy feely stuff, the
Hmm.
kind of intuitive stuff. That's when the right brain goes, oh yeah, so you do think I'm important, huh? Okay, so that's where I think that joins together. The other thing too is a lot of people who are scientists who discover, like world changing things. Will always say that it was their intuition that got them their scientific discovery.
Hmm.
So I think at some point, science has to acknowledge that there's a part of us called the intuitive brain or the intuitive mind, or just some extra sense that we have that we need to push the science forward. So even if you're constantly logic is your way, that's my way of thinking, thinking through if something doesn't work, what other things will work. That's my solution problem solving process. And I do that with my clients too. What's working, what's not. Let's start there. And that's really getting away from the emotion of it, because as I said, people are attached to their pain. People are attached to their issues,
Hmm.
and they're really reluctant to let that go. So you can't come in the first thing and say, "Oh, that thing that's annoying you, stop doing that."
Hmm.
Like, why did I hire you? I could have said that to myself. So that doesn't seem to work. But if you go in and, with an analytic mind and present them with facts everyone's on board with. This is bothering you. This is working for you. This is where we need to make a change. Everyone's got to buy into that. We can start there. But when we get deeper, and then the faith is there in the person who's helping you, the therapist or whatever you want to call the trainer, then I can let them know that, well, there's some few things in your thinking. You might want to start looking at doing some self-care. You might want to start looking at your, what is the thing that triggers you, all of that stuff. That they have to have some faith in me before they start that process. So we start with the facts, the left brain approach, because everyone can get on board with that. People have shields up when you're starting to get into their stuff. Don't get into my mind and all that stuff, because that's my personal property. Trespassers are not allowed. So nobody wants to share their innermost thoughts with you. What's bothering you? No, I don't want to talk about that. I've got a back pain. Go fix that. Okay,
Hmm.
start with that. But then we know that it's their thinking that got them there. Stress and breathing are related, and breathing improperly creates pain. So that's an equation that a lot of people won't really embrace the first time you meet them, because then they're going to go, you're thinking I'm thinking about my pain, that's causing the pain, let's just get out of here. But it's true. If their mind is stress oriented with thought patterns, then that travels into their body and shows up as pain.
Hmm.
So that's basically a short answer, is both together. They're
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. The pain is. It's so. You keep on saying that hugging there, and oh my
I
goodness, it's
know it's
terrible.
a bad image,
It's
but it's
terrible.
true.
Yeah, it's
And
terrible.
hundreds of clients later, I can say that that's a true
Just
thing,
to
because
swim in their misery.
yeah, well, because their identity is with that, and so that's where
Right.
the thought process. Like, if you get up every morning and say, "I'm the world's greatest runner," I'm the world's greatest runner, then at least you make it around the block, right?
Mm.
Like if you're Mount Everest, then maybe you can make it to base camp.
Mm.
Like if you have a positive attitude of something, you may not buy into the fact that you're an Olympic runner, but now running is in your mind, and now you can run around the block. But if you get up every morning and say, I've got back pain, and back pain and knee, they're never going to be separated. Then you meet me, and I've got this Herculean task now separating you from your
Mm,
pain.
mm,
It's just a thing. There was a time when you didn't have it. So, and the
mm,
same thing with anything. And the other problem is that people don't realize with the intuitive bias is where the pain shows up. I mean, this is next level, but I think I throw it in. Is that where the pain shows up is not where the source of the pain is.
hmm.
And so it keeps knocking at different centers in your body until it knocks at a point where you can't ignore it. Because now you have maybe shoulder pain and the mother can't pick up the groceries. So when I trace it back and I start doing a physical diagnosis on the person with my skills, I find out that there's actually an imbalance in their foot, and that's traveling neural network wise through their shoulder across the body. And
Wow.
then their shoulders hurting. And I've done this with many clients and they think it's really weird, but it works. And then they realize, oh, I see what you're saying. You're tracing back where the action point is. And then suddenly, I give them a self care program for their foot, and their shoulder pain is gone.
Hmm. Has there been anything, Emma, in the last month or so that you changed your mind on?
Uh, Maybe in the last year, I've
Okay.
changed my mind on was that um, when it gets to a critical point where people identify themselves with their pain, I always thought there was a point I could get to the client. I could get to the client at some level and try these different things. But I have found that sometimes it's so deep, their identity with what's wrong with them, what the pain is, or what their issues are so deep that their fear causes them to self sabotage.
Wow.
And I didn't realize that for a long time until recently. I had a client. We were always making progress, but it would be like this sawtooth. We make the progress, and then there's an incident of pain again. It goes back. And usually that's when a break happens between her working out with me and then kind of leave her alone for a bit, like whatever. And then because she's got her schedule, crazy schedule. And so we do this and then we sawtooth back to the same issues. They show up differently, but I'm telling you, like with my intuitive sense, no, no, you triggered this yourself with whatever it was. And then I realized there is a fear of being healthy that I didn't realize was a thing. Because if you're too healthy, you've got nothing to complain about. I know
Wow.
it's weird. Like to me, that would be amazing. I think that's where people want to be. But sometimes, the brain is a weird thing. And they feel they're afraid of being healthy because if they have nothing to complain about, then now what? What my identity was all about that thing I had that wasn't
Hmm.
right. So now what? Now what do I do with myself when I'm healthy? Like that just boggles my mind that that's a thing, but it is. And so they self sabotage and they re trigger their pain. Now, some have codependencies with their therapist too. That's something I just realized that they might trigger it so that they have more sessions. I know it's weird and I've never seen it before, but now I understand it as a thing is that um, they feel like as long as something's wrong with them, there's somebody's going to look after them or somewhere they can go for help. And if they have a life where they don't have therapists or they don't have RMTs or anybody that they need to see, what are they going to do with all that energy? To me, oh yeah, that's amazing. Now you go write a book. I don't know, go do, climb Mount Everest. I don't know, do crazy things that you can do now. But that's a weird. So that's something I had to wrap my mind. Oh, I see. That's something that people have. The fear of being healthy. Okay, interesting.
Some
Okay.
people can't be saved. Very interesting.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to your first thing. It's self
Mm.
motivated fear of being healthy, and unless you get rid of fear, you have no hope of solving problems. Problem solving always comes from faith that there is a solution. But if
Mm.
you're afraid of the solution, like if you have a student who's afraid of of doing well, I've seen this too from my friends, children who are afraid of doing well because they feel if they do well, they won't have friends. Somehow
Hmm.
that's self-defined in the society, and so there's all of that. So there is this mental, they may be from that childhood state that adults can carry it. The fear of being successful. There's that too in business, because if you're too successful, maybe people won't like you,
Hmm.
or your friends won't like you or something. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that, between the two ears there. It's crazy, and it could define you, and it could destroy you,
Right.
or it could make you win
Make it
an
great.
Olympic. Yeah, exactly. It
Make it
could make
great.
you, yeah,
Yeah.
make it great. Yeah.
Speaking of fear, so I started my business back in the 90s, Hema, and I was working way too hard. And I was in my 20s. And, I'm at the doctor and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So I'd gained all this weight and, was putting my health in the back seat. And she says to me, she knew how to get to me. She says, look, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So there's the fear you just talked about, right? All of a sudden, I can abuse myself all I want with my poor eating habits and non-exercising and poor sleeping, etc. But now I've got a family and I've got this little girl who's just born and I have to show up for them. So there's the immediate fear. So spent the next 6, 7 months, lost about 120 pounds and kept it off. These kinds of things in life, you can't look as a finishing line because if you pass the finishing line, now I can, I'm all set now. These are lifelong changes you have to make. So when I tell people this story, and especially with weight loss and getting healthy, the people want a quick silver bullet kind of thing, and there is none. I just say discipline. That's how, focus, willpower, etc. How does discipline play a role in your life, Hema? Murty?
Oh, everything. As I said, the morning habits are non-negotiable. As I talked about, like you were
Mm,
talking about how fear propelled you. And for me, I have a lot of clients for whom it goes the other way. But you're right, grappling with what you just said, the fear of something, it propels you. So if you just, your sum up statement of if not doing things is going to lead to worse health or a worse situation. So you've got to keep up the habits. And so the only way I do that is by creating a space where those habits are non-negotiable. Like you
hmm,
just said, I mean, you just summed it up so well, is that if you don't make space for those habits, that is going to be a signal to your brain that, hey, guess what? You're all those bad stuff, you're allowed to come back. I'm opening the door. But no, all of those people who've bought into good habits, we have shut that door, nailed it so that don't come back. Those things that plague people, they are not allowed. So you're putting up a big sign by being disciplined and saying, not allowed in.
hmm,
I'm going to be doing all the things I can in my power to make sure that none of the negative forces, none of the negative symptoms, negative issues are allowed in. If they do, I am going to take a big sword and just cut it out. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to review all the things that need to happen, what's not happening right, what's going well, what do I need to do to make today happy, how am I defining myself. Those are really good questions. And I give that to all my clients. I say, get up in the morning and say three things that you are.
hmm,
What are you? How are you defining yourself? And that's where it starts, right? Like, because you were just telling me about your history, and that's where it starts. Like, how are you defining yourself? What are the things that make you you? Like, how are you seeing yourself? And that is where we start. If they, have different definitions and none of them refer to themselves as their own self care, if none of them are referring back and pointing finger that they need to spend some time with themselves, then there's a problem. And that's where the work starts. And then they can say, okay, how do I do that? Well, and I can tell them, well, what's the thing that's causing your issues? And then we can start working there and then keep it as simple as possible. I mean, with discipline comes responsibility. That's the flip of that, is that you now have to be responsible for your own discipline, because there's outside discipline is not going to help you. It's got to be
hmm.
an inner discipline. You've got to be motivated. You've got to say, those things are not allowed in my life. So I am going to make sure that that's going to happen. I'm going to motivate myself to get up and put the time in. I've known real go-getters who have turned their life around, and you do too with your story. Is that they have created the time and space in their life where they have made the sacrifices in time getting up earlier, not doing one activity for the sake of doing something else. And I think that's where it starts. You know, that if discipline isn't there, I guarantee you none of the people who have made achievements in life will have gotten to where they are. You know, none of the people. So even if it's a small win in your own little world, you don't have to be on the world stage. But if your own little world, like even writing a book, you know, doing that, you must have had not to do one thing in order to get that book written. You know, everyone who's written a book can say that they had to sacrifice time. You know, and even with, you know, your work or anybody else's, anybody who's doing something where people are getting something from it, you've had to make a choice. Am I going to waste time doing this or am I going to do something a little more productive? You know, and that's the choice everybody has. You can choose laziness or you can choose discipline. You know, it's a choice, and it's hard for people to understand that it is a choice. Sometimes they say circumstances, but you've chosen to either look at your circumstances or you've chosen to be a slave to your circumstances. I think
Mm.
that's very important to understand for a lot of people.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pinz podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pinz merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pinz logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pinz merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. What motivates you, Hema?
Just to be better the next day. I think that, you know, just the knowledge that I can be better the next day is what motivates me. So,
Hmm.
and, you know, and I say this over and over again, but I found that people who do a review every morning of how that day can be good and what happened yesterday that didn't make it as good as it could have been,
Hmm.
I think that's what propels me because now I know, okay, I'm going to make this little change in today's schedule so that time hog doesn't happen.
Hmm.
You know, and I think that's very important.
Self-improvement. So given your motivation of continued improvement, continued growth, how do you measure success?
Just by, you know, being happy with the changes that I've made. So if yesterday I say, well, the goals I had for yesterday may or may not have happened because of these reasons, and then I
Hmm.
make a change, and today is a better day because I've done this. It's a growing process, and as long as I can keep growing, and I'm never going to give up, then I think if I've helped one more person, if I've made you know, one more YouTube video that's helped one more person, I think that is how I measure
Hmm.
that I've done the things I'm supposed to do, that I feel like I'm here to do. Then
Impact.
that's a good day,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I thank you so much for your time. I know we had to push this off a couple times, but I'm so glad we got eventually to
All
talk.
right.
Next time I'm in the Ottawa area, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
Please. Yes, that'd be
How
great.
can people get in touch with you?
Well, my website is getshanti.com. That's get GETSHANTI.com. And there you have a contact me. You have all of my stuff, what motivates me to help the next person, and they can get all the information they need over there. There's some free downloads for 3 steps for back pain that you could do right today. So, all of that good stuff.
Great stuff. X, Pinterest, YouTube, LinkedIn, Substack. Yeah, it's a great, great site. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hema, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This whole conversation was amazing, and I appreciate you so much and all your work. So thank
You
you.
be well. Namaste.
Namaste to you too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. podcast information. The video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.